The heat of the late afternoon sun pressed down on the dry plains as silence stretched between the worn cowboy and the trembling Apache widow who stood before him, her breath uneven, her hands half raised as if unsure whether to shield herself or surrender to fate. And when he lifted his hand, more in warning than intention, her cry split through the stillness. "Stop. I'll be your obedient wife." Though the words sounded more like desperation than devotion, shaped by the heavy fear she carried after months of loss, raids, and being hunted by men who believed widows were weak. Yet the truth was that she had endured more than any of them understood. And the cowboy Cole Maddox, hardened by frontier life but not cruel at heart, froze mid-movement, stunned by her plea. For he had never wanted obedience, never wanted to frighten her. He had only wanted to stop her from stepping into the path, where a rattler lay coiled and ready to strike. Now she stared at him with wide, dark, glistening eyes, breath shaking, arms trembling, and he slowly lowered his hand, palms open, voice softer than the desert wind as he whispered, "Ma'am, I wasn't going to hurt you." But she didn't believe him, not at first, because too many men had spoken sweet words before letting violence follow. Too many had used her vulnerability against her after her husband died defending their small homestead. Too many had looked at her as though her grief meant she had no right to stand tall, and Cole read all of that torment in the way she shrank from him. Her name was Nia, a woman known in her community for her quiet strength and deep knowledge of herbs, yet now she felt cornered, alone, with only strangers around her, and the cowboy, feeling the weight of her fear, stepped back, letting the space between them widen until she saw that he meant no harm, and the look in her eyes slowly shifted, from terror to wary confusion as he pointed toward the rattlesnake silently curling back into the brush, saying gently, "I was trying to pull you away from that, not to raise a hand to you." And when she followed his gaze and saw the creature disappear, her knees weakened, the shock of the moment washing over her. She sank to the dirt, covering her face, not out of humiliation, but because her chest ached with the release of fear she'd been carrying for far too long, and Cole, unsure if approaching her would comfort or frighten her further, crouched a safe distance away, waiting until she slowly looked up, tears streaking the dust on her cheeks, and she whispered, "I thought you were like the others." And he shook his head, removing his hat, placing it gently on the ground between them like an offering of peace, and said, "I don't want a wife, obedient or otherwise. I just want to help." Though he knew she had every reason to doubt him, because the frontier was full of men who took what they wanted by force, and a woman alone, especially one whose people had been treated with suspicion, disdain, and cruelty, had few reasons to trust any stranger. Nia's voice broke as she spoke of the last months, of running from those who tried to claim her late husband's land, of men who mocked her traditions, of nights sleeping beneath the stars, praying not for safety, but for a single day without being chased. And as she spoke, Cole realized how much strength it took for her to survive, how wrong it was that someone so resilient had been pushed to the point where even a protective gesture looked like a threat. The cowboy extended a hand, slowly, cautiously, giving her the choice to accept it or not, and after a long moment, she placed her hand in his, not out of surrender, but out of a fragile new trust, forming between two souls who had known far too much loss. Cole helped her to her feet and led her toward the shade of an old juniper tree, where he offered her canteen water and listened to every word she said, not with pity but with respect. And for the first time in months, Nia felt seen, truly seen, instead of judged or hunted. Cole told her of the ranch he worked at, of the decent folks there who wouldn't turn her away, and she found herself wanting to believe him, wanting to hope that maybe, just maybe, not every man in the world wanted to break her spirit or take advantage of her grief. When they reached his horse, Nia hesitated, staring at the saddle, remembering how many times she'd fled danger, and Cole, sensing her hesitation, placed his hand on his heart and said, "You decide where we go." You want me to leave you be, I'll do that. You want help, I'll give it. But you don't owe me anything. Not obedience, not loyalty, not a promise. You only owe yourself a chance to live without fear. Those words cracked. Something open inside her, the part that still believed in honor, in humanity, in the possibility that kindness existed even in a land as harsh as the desert. And she nodded slowly, then more firmly, as she stepped toward the horse. Cole helped her mount, then climbed behind her, careful not to crowd her, and together they rode toward the horizon where the sun dipped low and turned the sky gold, a silent pact forming between them, one built not on fear, but on trust earned inch by inch. Along the way, Nia realized she hadn't truly been offering obedience when she cried out in terror earlier. She had been begging for safety, for stability, for someone who would protect rather than prey upon her. And though Cole was no hero carved from stone, he was a man trying to do right in a world that often rewarded wrong, and that was enough to let her breathe a little easier as the wind swept past them. As night began to fall, Cole glanced at her and said quietly, "Nia, don't ever bow your head to a man again. You're stronger than any of us." And she felt something inside her, something long crushed by grief and fear, begin to ignite again, not with obedience but with dignity and hope. And as they rode toward a new beginning, she realized she had not become anyone's